Okay, it's time to talk about the K-Bar purchase on Amazon. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer, everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, we've got another huge amount of information incoming from the Idaho student murder case. But what we're going to do is hit all the very important, mind-boggling, boom-worthy information first. That's why yesterday we devoted it to the additional information that we received when it came to Dylan and Bethany and the activities in that ginormous 8-hour gap that we have between the time that the state is telling us that the crime actually occurred based on those two girls' forensic downloads of their phones and obviously other things like security cameras and whatnot. The state really was cherry picking what they were giving to us, making it seem as if there wasn't really too much going on. What the defense ended up doing was showing us a lot more, filling in massive amounts of information, massive amounts of chunks of time now have answers, and none of it's good. The next big thing came whenever we finally actually got clarification and actual official validation, not some rumor, okay, validation that there is a K-Bar knife purchase associated with an account used or owned by Bryan Kohberger when it comes to Amazon. We're going to go over the document right now. I have a few questions. I'm really wondering why a few things, a few very specific details about this purchase aren't being mentioned. And I'm wondering if it's because they really just aren't there. Now, I talked about this last night. It was really late. It was way after midnight. I posted about it on the community tab after the live was over. And now I've gone back through it and I've highlighted the important portions. We're not going to talk about the case law that's being mentioned in here. A lot of it, according to the way that the state's arguing it and the way that I'm also interpreting the way that the state is arguing it, it's that the cases being cited, they don't really have enough relevance to really be used as an argument here, which is something that I myself has said several times. A lot of you also agree, and Taylor's arguments are not as strong as they really need to be here. I really hope that they're going to be cleaning it up before we get to trial, or else this is going to be really difficult for a jury to follow. It's a little bit everywhere. Okay, let's go ahead and read the document in full and discuss what this actually is telling us. Comes now the state of Idaho. Again, this is a state document by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, and hereby responds to defendant's motion in limine number 9 regarding excluding Amazon click activity evidence at trial. Let me make this a bit bigger, or at least more even. That should look a little bit better. Okay, facts. On November 13th of 2022, law enforcement responded to 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. 4 victims were found deceased with apparent stab wounds. We also know that they've been described as gouges, punctures, rips, tears. There's been a lot, actually. There's been a lot of different descriptions when it comes to the weapon and the type of wounds themselves. And that's just been, from all kinds of different places. A K-Bar knife sheath with a United States Marine Corps USMC logo was found lying next to one of the victims. That would be Maddie. Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found on the K-Bar knife sheath found on scene. And the defense has never once tried to state it wasn't Bryan Kohberger's DNA. This right here just goes through the warrant information, but we're going to see that in person here in a minute whenever we go through what they're claiming that they actually found. And again, this is just stuff stated by Cox, which is somebody from the expert witness testimony section for this Amazon stuff. We've gone through information from this person already. And as you can see here, I also just stated defense citing cases that don't have relevance per the state. And again, I sort of agree. They give a couple of reasons why, like certain things are about body cam footage. Another one is about a felony drug case. Like there's really not a lot of similarities where there's strong fights for like what the whole point of this actually is. Now, this is where it gets to the actual data that they claim, and I'm going to read the entire paragraph. Further, in this case, the evidence at issue is complete. The defendant argues that the data the state has disclosed to the defendant is extremely narrow when compared to the more inclusive and broad warrants and subpoenas. But this argument is incorrect. To confirm, the state has disclosed to the defendant all data, including clickstream data, that Amazon has produced in this case. The state narrowly tailored a search warrant for evidence regarding the crimes of homicide or burglary occurring at 1122 King Road. This included temporal limitations based on the officer's investigation, which limited the search from March 20th through March 30th, time it was known Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife with a sheath and a sharpener from Amazon. Notice that it says known, because this is done and being served and being found out after the grand jury. This is after the feds already went in and did whatever it was that they did to get information from Amazon. So Moscow knew exactly which dates to pull because another agency already did the work for them. And again, this had to have been after the grand jury. That's the only way this would have worked, because as you're going to see, the information for this doesn't come back from Amazon until like June. And then again, it was for 2 date ranges, the 10 days in March, and then again on November 1st of 22 through December 6th of 2022, right before and after the homicides. I find it a little odd that they're wondering if he's looking at anything knife sheath related prior, if they have like the verified purchase in March. Why do they need to look 2 weeks prior to the event at his history? Like, I understand maybe the after, but the before is a bit odd to me. That's just my opinion. Kohberger's entire click history, items not related to knives and accessories, was not relevant. Without any legal basis, the defendant claims the state cherry-picked specific clicks or purchases out of the Amazon click history. This is simply not true unless you consider seeking only items of evidentiary value, cherry-picking. A relevant click activity on Kohberger's account would not provide any relevant context to Kohberger's actual click activity, i.e., purchase of a K-bar knife with a sheath before the murders, and his click activity indicating a search for a knife and a sheath after the murders. Now, there's a footnote, but we're going to get to that in just a second. When it comes to this cherry picking thing, and I'm going to show you guys the inventory report from his parents' house, showing that he, and I guess if this actually is a shared or a household Amazon account, I don't know for sure if it is. I tried to find it. I remember something being said about it being like a household account or a shared account when it comes to Amazon. I just don't know how true that is. It could be because students get like discounts. Like, there's an Amazon student discount if you have an actual student ID and you're in college or whatever, and your Amazon Prime account is cheaper. At least it was for me, and I know that that's like still a thing. I've seen it recently. So maybe they all had just like access to the account. I don't remember. I tried to find it. I could be wrong, so don't take that like as verbatim. That's just something that my memory keeps like coming back to. And again, I went to a couple of the hearings and tried to find it in the transcript about something about a household or a shared account. And I went to a couple of the documents, but I couldn't find it. I could be tripping. I really could, but something in my brain just keeps telling me that that was said. But again, I could be wrong. So again, don't take that like as church, because it's not, okay? But maybe them showing more than just the one purchase or the whatever clicks or whatever would have shown more of like a hobby or a pattern or a habit, possibly, or the fact that this stuff is like shown more often because there is a pattern of purchasing. Because I mean, some of you guys that have been here know there was quite a few different weapons listed that were taken from the home. Now, we don't know if they were his dad's, if they were his, if they were both of his, but we do know there was a pew-pew next to his bed. Because all the talk about him being in the kitchen, that was one thing. But by the time they got into the house to arrest him, he was already back in a bedroom, in his bedroom, and there was a weapon on the nightstand by his bed. A pew-pew one, not a manual one. And again, this knife that they keep talking about that he bought, they're not mentioning that it had the insignia on it, the USMC, the Marine Corps insignia. Why wouldn't they be mentioning that? If they're going to go so far as to say, we know for a fact in March of 2022, before he even moved to Pullman, that he bought this K-bar, why are they not just throwing in that extra two little freaking words with insignia, or few little words, and it had the US Marine Corps insignia? Like, why are they leaving that part out? Unless this isn't one that has that insignia and that's why they're purposely leaving it out. Like, what if this is a K-bar purchase from way before he ever even moved and it's completely irrelevant because it's not the right one? Because you guys need to remember, there was a knife that is item number 1 on the inventory report from Pennsylvania, but to this day they keep telling us the knife for the sheath apparently is missing, but they've got one on the inventory report. So if the inventory report one, that's apparently not the one, is the one that this Amazon purchase is for, and all of this was for nothing because they already knew it wasn't the right one and they were just using it for circumstantial boo-boo, you know how pissed everyone's going to be? Something to think about. Now, the next big highlighted portion, it just says that the K-bar knife sheath with the USMC logo was found next to one of the victims at 1122 King Road. It's just the rundown before they conclude their document. The defendant's DNA was found on the K-bar knife sheath found on the scene. Applying the test for relevancy, first, Kohberger's click activity, which shows a purchase of a K-bar knife and a sheath before the homicides, makes it more probable than it would be without the evidence that the K-bar sheath found at the crime scene was Bryan Kohberger's. Second, Kohberger's click activity after the homicides makes it more probable than it would be without the evidence that Kohberger had a reason to search for a K-bar knife and a sheath after the homicides. Okay, well, for one, you still have like a 2-week before the homicide time frame, which is weird to me for what you're trying to claim here. And again, they're not mentioning the fact that the one that he bought has the insignia. And I don't understand why they would purposely choose to leave this part out. I mean, why isn't there a photo at this point? Like, they've released so much more information. I don't know why they're leaving stuff like this just out in the up like that. Why not mention he bought the USMC one? I don't understand. I don't understand that at all. So then it comes down here and it talks about in the footnote, the defendant argues that Amazon's recommendation system influences what users see and click on, but this purported use of AI technology is not relevant. And see, I said this whenever they were talking about how the AI on Amazon and the way that it shows you ads, it can influence you and all these things had some sort of standing. I argued then, no, it doesn't. AI might be able to show you stuff, but your brain is going to be the one that adds it to cart and does all those extra steps. Okay. So I already said that whole AI thing was already out the window. I don't really care. The human is responsible for the steps the human takes, not whatever gets flashed in front of you by a stupid AI program. Now, I also don't feel as if he's dumb enough for what he's claiming to be wanting to offer in way of his expertise to the area, that he would be dumb enough to, like, not only bring a weapon that needs a sheath and bring the sheath with him to begin with. Like, let's be so for real right now. That's like a dumbass move. Let's be so for real. But I don't think he'd also be stupid enough to then try to find a replacement sheath for the damn thing on his own devices. Like, his whole thing was cloud-based forensics. He's not going to do all of these asininely stupid things. There's just no freaking way. Like I said, one mistake, maybe I can be like, okay, there's like a ways around this, but making all the little bitty mistakes or trying to claim that he made, it just doesn't make any sense for how he is where he is, or at least where he was when it came to his level of education and the way that he's being highly recommended by people. That kind of mentality and the way that that brain would work wouldn't then jump on Amazon and try to find a replacement sheath. That doesn't make any freaking sense, knowing how easily that's traced. Not for what his expertise is supposed to be in. That doesn't math. I'm sorry. Defendant argues, pursuant to IRE 403, the relevant evidence should be excluded. The defendant fails to show how this evidence is unfair, confusing, misleading, would cause delay, waste time, or would be cumulative. Well, I'll say right now, again, like I've already said, how come they're not claiming that it has the same insignia that they're claiming that one has? Like, why are they not matching the insignia on the one that he purchased to what they're claiming was on the one that was found at the scene? I feel like if it matched, it would have it in there. And if it does match and it's not in there, that's misleading and it's confusing and it's unfair to the public to still not be clear and concise about what you're trying to tell us. I'm not even going to read the next sentence because to me, it's at least three of those things. And honestly, it's also a big waste of time because you're still not being clear and honest. What is clear from the defendant's filing is that the defendant doesn't like this piece of the state's evidence and therefore would like to keep this piece of evidence from the jury. However, his arguments are without merit. While this evidence is prejudicial, relevant evidence tends to be, it is not unfair. And then we have a footnote that reads the following. The defendant touches on the issue of identifying the account user making the Amazon search inquiries as shown by the click activity. Defendant's motion at page 4. So this is something that was submitted already. The state recognizes that the identity of the user making the inquiries is relevant, and the state intends to rely not only on the click activity, but also other circumstances to connect the defendant to the original knife purchase and subsequent search inquiries for a replacement knife and or sheath. A replacement knife or a sheath, not just a sheath? Okay. This will include the defendant's financial activities, the click activities, vis-a-vis other events such as the homicides, a related purchase activity connected only to the defendant, and testimony from witnesses with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife. You know, there is also a big possibility that he might have actually known the type of weapon that they were looking for before the public did, because his TA job was actually like filtered through, like obviously the school, but filtered through the Pullman Police Department. And Pullman was helping in this investigation. Like that whole area really was sort of like doing things, putting searches in, bolos, keeping an eye out, all the things. And it's not like they weren't discussing things. It's not like they weren't having conversations with police officers from other agencies and information wasn't being talked about, especially before the gag order. Okay. So even if there are like click activity reports after the crime and it is before the public knew, because obviously, before the public knew, that really, again, can be sort of accounted for by his affiliation with the police department there. They're going to have to literally prove that that knife sheath has the insignia. I couldn't really argue anything if it had the insignia, because as far as I'm concerned, homeboy was never a Marine. So for you to have a Marine Corps K-bar sheath would be kind of odd in my opinion if it doesn't have like a personal thing to you. I mean, I guess you could just like the Marines and you could just want it, cool, but to me it's still a little bit odd. And again, they're not saying that it has that insignia, and to me that's a bit weird. So again, them saying that him clicking on it and looking around for some sort of replacement is again just assumption based on them actually trying to state this is the weapon. But they're really not, sort of like at the same time. Now, it also says they're going to be using testimony from witnesses with knowledge that the defendant purchased a K-bar knife. Now, I mentioned in my community post, this could very well be his family members that lived with him whenever he bought the knife before he moved over to Washington from Pennsylvania. Like, his family is most likely going to take the stand. We know that his parents already took the stand in Pennsylvania whenever they were trying to see if he might have been involved in a murder case up there or a missing persons case. I don't really remember the details of that one, but it was the very first like thing they try to say was going to be a big domino to finding out that he was some sort of crazy serial situation, and it turned out no. Like his parents went in and testified on 2 different days and nothing came of it, and the police department came out and said no connection. And there's been nothing else since then. So that whole thing about him being some sort of psycho that had done this before and we were going to find all these connected cases, none of that's turned out to be true. So it could be family to be like, yeah, I mean, sure, I saw him open a package. He said, hey, mom, my knife just got here or whatever. Or maybe he actually bought it as like a present for someone. There's actually a lot of different like explanations for this. Because we have to remember, if they cannot actually put him at that location, he did not stretch Armstrong arms and suddenly reach all the way over there and do whatever they're claiming that he did without physically being in that location. And if the truth is he wasn't in the vicinity of King Road the way that they are adamant that they can prove, I don't know what else to like tell you. If they can put him there, that changes everything. If they can show us that the damn knife sheath on the knife that they're claiming he purchased had the United States Marine Corps insignia, then I can't argue that. Okay, but right now, why are they still being sketchy and not completely honest with what they're claiming? This is so stupid. But then again, it could also be just their expert witnesses about Amazon, which I still find kind of interesting, because instead of like a full-on Amazon expert, what we learned from the documents about the experts coming in and like the vague information, like the stuff that the defense is arguing when it comes to a whole lot of the state's experts, instead of bringing in like an expert for the Amazon stuff, they're bringing in like a federal agent, like just a federal agent that worked the case, helped with the case, instead of an actual expert. That's kind of weird, but whatever. So this is how we've seen the Amazon warrant for Bryan Kohberger so far. This is what they've now given us in this new document. Now, this 5889 number is the number that he had whenever he still lived in Pennsylvania. This is also the number that is attached or was attached to his WSU information on the directory. He was still listed as a teacher's assistant on the WSU website whenever his name was announced to the public as the person that was arrested. People had screenshots of it. I've shown it several times. It was on there with this Pennsylvania number. So for this to be the number that made the order, and it was months and months before he even moved over here, pretty normal. Okay, so whenever it comes to the original warrant, when they were actually going in and putting in the Amazon identification number on the Amazon warrant itself to find out who just blanket bought this type of weapon, if you actually put in the number on Amazon, it pops up the K-bar knife. And as you can see, you can actually look at the bottom and see the recommendations, and a sharpener, the same way they're claiming that he bought a sharpener with his knife, a sharpener is included in the little suggestions down at the bottom. Now, if you take the other number, the one that is ZIA0, and put that into Amazon, it shows you that it's just a sheath by itself. Now, this, of course, was way before they did the separate one for Bryan Kohberger's information. That one obviously didn't even get ran until May of 2023. And as you can see for this one, it was actually done on November 26th of 2022, and they had the information back to them on 12/8 of 22. And as I showed you, or as I mentioned earlier, when it came to this information, it had to have been after the grand jury. I guess I need to show you on this side. It had to have been after the grand jury because they served it on May the 8th. Well, they got it on May the 8th and they served it on May the 10th of 2023, and the information didn't come back until June the 27th of 2023, further proving that since the information was received after the grand jury happened, this was them sort of playing cleanup after the Fed's information was submitted for the grand jury. Because now look what we have issues with. We have issues, according to the court hearings, with the federal information for all the information they got for Bryan Kohberger coming through. They don't want to have their reports. They don't want to put their opinions, their analysis. They don't want to have all of their information at all documented, but they want to be the ones on the stand to testify with no paper trail to back up what they're on there saying. That's insane to me. So this is the inventory report that was taken from whenever he was arrested from inside of his parents' house. Because remember, it's his parents' house. Now, again, the feds. The feds are the ones that got the inventory report together, just like the feds are the ones who took the swabs of his cheeks, the ones who did the IgG information and called and gave them a name with no other details on the 19th of December, the ones that did the forensic download of his phone, the ones who did everything. The feds are the ones who did the inventory report. And as you can see, the very first thing here is a knife. Now, there's other weapons on here. We know for a fact now that there was this one right here found on his nightstand next to his bed, and he advised them of it whenever they entered the house. hey, hold on a minute, I have a this over there, you know what I mean? And again, they are not telling us that this purchased one all the way back in March, months before he moved, had the insignia of the one that they're claiming was found next to Maddie's body. And I don't know why they wouldn't just put that out there. If they're going to sit there and tell us he made a purchase, why not tell us it matches the actual purchase? Like, just say, here's a photo of the one that he bought. Here's the actual Amazon listing of the knife he bought. Look, it has the United States Marine Corps insignia on it. If it's there, why can't they just be that honest? This is stupid. But that's it, you guys. That's the Amazon warrant, and that's the information. Now, again, yes, it is actually verifying through official channels now that there was a purchase. But why are they not just telling us that it had the symbol on it? Why are they not just telling us that? And again, I find it hard to believe that he'd be dumb enough to go on there and try to find a replacement sheath for the fact that he's supposed to be going to school and wanting to lend his services to teach rural areas about cloud-based forensics. Get with the times. You know what I mean? That just doesn't add up to me. I mean, none of this adds up to me. And again, if they could actually put him at the vicinity, if they're going to show us that it does have the insignia, I don't have an argument. But until then, I still have an argument. Because we have unknown DNA, we have fishy ass roommates that don't make any sense, actions that make no sense, a timeline that makes no sense, stuff about the dog that makes no sense, stuff about Kaylee's hesitance to go back and the possibilities of what that could actually mean that don't make any sense. There's way too much here that doesn't make any sense. On top of the actual case facts not adding up, the puzzle pieces are being forced to fit together, and I don't know how much longer they can really keep trying to be pushed together and forced before everything just blows up. Something has to give eventually. We're just waiting on it. But let me know how you guys are feeling about this new bit of information down in the comments. I know it's going to sway a lot of you guys the other side. And I'll admit it does sway it a little bit more. But they've got to prove he was in the vicinity of King Road. And they're adamant that that's not the case. And I believe that. They have proof that nothing matches up. And again, why, oh why, is Ridge Road, where the make and the model of the car apparently was finally validated, why is that not being submitted so far when it comes to these self-authenticating records? I'm hoping that they actually do turn it in, because so far it's been a huge conversation piece in this case, but we've only seen Linda Lane and a couple of other things. Ridge Road's not in there. But again, I want to know how you guys feel about this newest bit of information regarding Amazon. Let me know how you guys are feeling down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.